Here's one for everybody. Do you know the 16th President of the United States? No, you were never introduced. All right, U.S. involvement, escalation, and division. That's today's video. And the concepts for the day: how does fighting in Vietnam compare to the fighting in World War II? Who are the Viet Cong and why are they so different than some of the enemies the United States fought in the past? What civil rights decision did Harry Truman make that has a large impact on troop morale in the Vietnam War? How do the draft and protest movements relate to each other? And why does the protest movement emerge on college campuses? Those last two, there'll be a continuing theme in another video or two. Key vocab for the day, quite a few here, from Vietnam War all the way through doves and hawks. Where I last left off, what I mentioned was escalation, the buildup of troops in Vietnam. So we're going to hear about that one today as well. If you recall from the last video, where we left off was the Tonkin Gulf region. The Tonkin Gulf being just off the coast of both Vietnams. And after the incident in the Gulf, the Tonkin Gulf Resolution was signed. And this gave the president, Lyndon B. Johnson at the time, whatever he could send it over as many troops as he felt necessary without Congress's approval. This is a big measure taken by the United States. So at the end, in 1963, there were approximately 16,000 troops over in South Vietnam. By the end of 1965, there are approximately 185,000 troops in Vietnam. Okay, so we really are involved now in the Vietnam War, even though Congress never actually declares the Vietnam War to be a war. In fact, the Korean War, which took place back in the early 1950s, was never declared by Congress either. So the last time the United States actually declared war, that Congress declared war, was in World War II when FDR got Congress's approval to declare war on Nazi Germany and Japan. So the U.S. heading into the Vietnam War, the type of warfare that we have is pretty basic. Not a lot has changed. It's just going to have grown more powerful. So the U.S. fighting tactics are all about high-powered forces, planes. Tanks aren't going to play a very strong role in Vietnam because jungles are going to be very much a part of the landscape and geography. But helicopters are going to be a very, very heavily utilized piece of machinery used in the Vietnam War. But it's going to go beyond that. Lots of bombs are going to be used. We're also going to have Agent Orange, napalm, even these missions called search and destroy missions, which you saw at the beginning of the video. In other words, the uniqueness or the different changes to the U.S. military approach is not significantly different in Vietnam. However, the enemy and their strategic difference is going to be much greater than what we've experienced in our most recent wars. And the enemy that we fight the most is going to be the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong are loyal to North Vietnam, but they are located in South Vietnam, and they're supported by North Vietnam. Okay, so that's the location and the situation of the Viet Cong. But they're also going to use guerrilla tactics, which is something that the United States has not, at this time, has not had a lot of experience against. What does it mean to be participating in a war of to participate against an enemy that uses guerrilla warfare? Well, it means there's, for starters, no real battlefront. You're not meeting head on with the enemy like the United States did with Germany in World War II. The uniforms of the enemy are going to be very different than what we've seen in the past. Guerrilla warfare in Vietnam for the Viet Cong, it means that they're going to dress like civilians. So telling Viet Cong apart from somebody who's not Viet Cong, or even somebody in South Vietnam who supports the United States and democracy, is a very tricky and dangerous job, as we will see with one specific event we highlight later, and that's going to be the My Lai massacre. Okay, but that's upcoming. Um, Not only do they dress as civilians, but they're also going to use a vast tunnel system. They're located, they know the jungles very well where the United States is on foreign territory. Mines, booby traps are going to be very tough. And with the exception of one major offensive, the Viet Cong are mainly playing a defensive war, and they're going to be located in the countryside, not located in the cities. Now, take a moment to look at this chart. It's not where I left off from the last slide, but it is something I talked about in the last slide. Study it for a second, pause the video, and see if you can guess which vocab word this gives an explanation to. If you guessed escalation, you are correct. You can see by the end of 65, this chart says that there were 184,000 troops in Vietnam, but by the end of 1968, 500,000 plus troops in Vietnam. Yikes.